The novel Lightfall was written for exactly someone like me. How so? Let me share, and maybe you'll find out it's also for someone like you. Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things that we enjoy. I'm Jim, the father of this show, and I'm here with a book review for you on a book I just read. It's only been out a couple of weeks, and I think you're going to love it. If you do, or if you just enjoyed this episode, be sure to give me a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Thanks. So I'm talking to you about Lightfall by Ed Crocker. This is Ed's debut novel, and it just came out a couple of weeks back, January 14th, 2025. The genre is epic fantasy, while making use of some characters that you'll definitely recognize from classic horror stories. Ed has been in the business, as I understand, of reviewing other people's books and professionally working to help other authors get edited and out there successful in publishing. Now it was time for him to spread his wings and fly. Yes, if you've read the book, you see what I just did there. Why did I read this book? Well, Derek over at D&J's Epic Quest suggested that we read Lightfall. He mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. It had just come out a few days earlier. I hadn't even heard of it. Now, this was a discussion he was having with myself and with Matt over at Go Read Books. And his idea was we'd all read it, and then we can get together and do a full spoil episode about the book. We all have our own channels. We're all very busy. We committed to, we'll fit it in when we can. Well, where I could fit it in popped up pretty quick when I looked at what this book was about. I was like, whoa, seriously? This sounds like something I would totally enjoy. So yeah, as soon as I finished the book that I was on, I jumped into Lightfall. And today, you're going to hear all about what I thought about it, mostly spoiler light, unlike when I get together with Derek and Matt. But at the end of the episode, we've got a new format here for our book reviews. They're going to stay spoiler light, but we're adding a segment right at the end that's full spoil. I'll warn you when I'm getting there in case you haven't read this book yet. Oh, this book. I did totally enjoy it. I'm going to tell you why, but first, I want to share with you that I am shocked that some booktubers just aren't vibing with this book. I looked on Goodreads. It only has a 3.76 out of 5. That is mind-blowingly low compared to the experience I had reading this book. Some people clearly are looking for other things. When I get into a story, I'm just looking for a great narrative, something that takes me away and helps me enjoy a good yarn with characters I can connect with and written in a way that doesn't drag. And I found all those features right here, and with some dark fantasy and horror elements that just added some zest to the story. Again, right in line with what I look for. I don't know what those other people are looking for. It must be that romantasy or stuff that I don't dig. We all have different preferences. This book rocks. The setting of the story is a world populated by 3 major societies. The first is made of vampires, and they all live in one city, and that city is called First Light. This is the last bastion of vampiredom. Their society used to be spread over much of the world and with multiple cities, but wars and catastrophes have taken place previous to the action of this book, which has left them now in just one heavily guarded and protected city, and they don't leave the city. The second society is werewolves. Though it never uses the term werewolves, that's what they are. But they're just the wolves. Now, these wolves are free to roam most of the known world. There's a reason for that. You got to read the story to figure out why. But they are what you expect. They are wolves that change into people, and vice versa. The third group are the sorcerers. Now, these are not people who went into spell books and trained. They are just born this way. They are living in various enclaves and monasteries around the world where they do research, they study, they carry on other work that they might be hired to do. and whatever other endeavors strike their fancy. The first book of the trilogy was primarily focused here on the vampires. Nearly all of the events take place right here in the city of First Light. One addition to the setting, I think it's good to mention here, the vampires remain in First Light because there is one other major player in the world that we know about at this point. We've got the vampires, the wolves, the sorcerers, but there's also the Greys. These are mysterious entities that nobody really knows what's going on with, other than they're exceedingly skilled at killing vampires. Any of them that they catch outside of First Light are not coming back. So there's stuff in the story explaining more about that, but that's what you know early on. They gotta stay safe from the Greys. Here's my Spoiler-Lite summary. This is about the vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers. So we know that. And we understand what vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers are, right? Not quite. There are key differences in this story. First of all, we, mortals, we don't exist in this story. All these creatures are immortal, and there are no normal people like us. These creatures can be killed, but unless they're actively killed, they are immortal. They just live on and on and on. At least that's true for the vampires and the werewolves. I'm not sure if that's true for the sorcerers. We didn't delve too deeply into sorcerer society in this book. I'm sure that is coming later. Now, vampires, they feed on blood, just like we know. They also must avoid sunlight. We know that. It causes near insta-death for them. Forget about crosses and garlic, though. That is not a part of this world. Beheading, however, that does work. That's a way you can kill a vampire. Other than insta-sun death and a beheading, they can pretty much come back from any wound, any damage that you do to them. Again, immortal and nearly unstoppable. What they need to come back is simply enough blood. Now here's the twist, and this is a great twist in the story. The type of blood matters. They live off of animal blood in this story, and not all animals are equal. Every animal's blood has different properties to it. Some are more weaker base animals, and they're just blood, like cow blood, that's basic subsistence living. You can get by on cow blood. But if that's all you get, basic animals like cows, you age. You're immortal, but you age. Think about that. Think about getting older and older and older with all the issues that come with getting old, but never dying. That's kind of awful. And that is the fate of some of these vampires. Because the vampire society has classes, and the lowest class, they just get the cheap blood. That's all they have access to. Higher types of blood, different animals, and even some blood that has been magicked, because some of the sorcerers have figured out how to magic the blood to make it even more powerful for a price. These different kinds of blood bring on different enhancements. Better vision, excellent hearing, super strength. These are temporary enhancements that last until the blood's effect on your body runs out. The more of the blood you take, the longer the enhancement lasts. And there are other benefits, such as not aging. If you have the better blood and you have it often enough, you don't get any older. You stay pristine. And the lords of the realm, they are in perfect health and they look incredibly awesome. But the best of all the blood is wolf blood, as in those werewolves. If they can get their hands on wolf blood, it's like drinking a Red Bull. Literally, it gives them wings and a whole bunch of other powers. Now, we don't learn so much about the wolves and the sorcerers in this story. Again, there aren't really werewolves. They're just the wolves, and they happen to have the ability, as lycanthropes in our world would, to transform quite easily between human shape and wolf shape. Even in human shape, they have enhanced wolf-like senses, just not quite as sharp as when they're all full wolf. Sorcerers, we learn even less about in this story, but we do learn there are 5 different classes of sorcerers, and you simply come into being as one of these 5 classes. They don't pick it. They don't train for it. They simply are. which specifically explains two of the key characters in this story who are of the one class of sorcerers that have no magical abilities. Interesting. They're sorcerers. They have no magic. The other four types all have a specialty: telekinesis, telepathy, manipulation of the elements, illusion, and then the ones that everybody makes fun of. They do things still. There's a purpose for this group, but not magic. This story, then, is about the vampires of First Light, their societal structure, and a mystery that threatens to tear it all apart. As perhaps it should be, because we come to learn pretty early in the story that there's something deeply wrong, corrupt with the city of First Light. We begin to see this pretty early on, as the opening of the story is the discovery of the death of the younger son of the ruling lord of the city. A death at the hands of the Greys outside the city walls, a place the young lord never should have been. At the same time the investigation into the young lord's death is occurring, the story also focuses on Sam, aka Samantha, a young palace maid who is just so sick of the life that she has as a menial in the palace and envisioning so much more for herself and scheming and planning for ways that she can get out of being a low-class nobody and turn herself into something better. Well, she gets assigned the task after the young lord is discovered dead to clean his room, to make sure any signs that would remind others of what had happened to him are put in their right places and no one will be disturbed. Well, in doing this, she comes upon a secret tied to the young lord's death that will either be her ticket out of here or her quick route to execution. The path she takes will lead her to an undercover organization within First Light that's trying to fight against the city's corruption, and will also bring her into league with one of the leaders of the wolf kind, and two of those powerless sorcerers who do have a different sort of power: secret knowledge. Knowledge that could unbalance, maybe destroy the entire world. And that's all I can tell you. There's so much more to this story, but you gotta read it, because I can't ruin it for you. The plot of the story has many layers, some obvious, some not so much. There were great discoveries all along the tale, only some of which I anticipated, but all of which were delightfully satisfying. I felt the author came up with a creative and authentic feeling story that was fun to read and definitely kept my interest. Foreshadowing is abundant for the reader who is paying attention. That's how I anticipated some of the things that happened, but still, some of the twists you'll never see coming. And yet, they're excellent twists. They don't feel fake. They make sense. And they happen in just all the best ways. As to the characters, these were fascinating. People with wants, needs, emotions, and motivations that sucked you into the story. Sam is the character I found myself most aligning with. I think that was the author's intention. Cheering for her efforts to rise up, to get out of trouble, to dodge danger, and somehow overcome catastrophes that seem to be coming her way. The wolf we meet, Raven, such an enjoyably written character. Fascinating qualities that left me eager to learn more about these wolves, which seems to be what is set up for the second book of the trilogy. You come to meet many of the vampiric nobility, and you learn that they are truly a mixed bag. Not all of them are entirely as they seem. In fact, most of them are not quite what they seem. The root of the corruption, and perhaps the salvation for the vampires, lies with these noble people, though perhaps not exclusively with them. I found the characters to be relatable, with some of them fun to cheer for, others great to boo against, and you do get sucked in by them. Even though we're talking about immortal beings, they can die, and you may feel it when that happens. Just saying. Crocker's writing style is very character-driven, as he writes this story in first-person narrative, but jumping through many different POVs in little snippets very quickly. He'll often have a scene from one character's perspective, then start the next chapter midway through that scene, but now from a different character's perspective who was also part of the scene. So you're getting multiple angles of the same events sometimes. Through these shared perspectives, he gives us a slightly unreliable narrator view because each person only knows what they know, but it's more reliable than the usual first person narrative where you only have that one perspective. We're getting so many different angles that we as readers are able to piece a lot of things together. Although there are certain key perspectives that we intentionally are never allowed to see, and that keeps certain mysteries from the reader until the right time for planned reveals. The pacing is fast, the story hops. It was great to just keep going and going. I read it pretty quickly. There's also a delightful level of humor in here between certain characters, even in the midst of tense situations. The way they interact with each other, the vampires, the wolf, the sorcerers, and they're all different ways of looking at the world. It just causes some fun banter, some tension that is tense but isn't tense. There's one character, one of the sorcerers in particular, provides quite a bit of comic relief at times, as does one of the vampires. Well, when you meet Alana, you'll know what I mean. I consumed this book via the audiobook. Shakira Shute narrates the story, and this was my first time listening to her as a book narrator. She brought great diversity to the characters. I always knew who I was listening to, and she added a richness to each of these different voices. It really helped add something to the picture you're developing in your mind of these characters. The humor, in particular, comes through with nice tone of voice that she uses. However, I did find her particular tone was difficult to hear sometimes when I'm driving. When I'm just doing chores around the house or out for a walk, it was perfect. But she gets soft when she gets down in the lower register at times, or for particularly emotional moments. And against normal traffic sound, it got lost. I had to keep changing the volume on the car. That's a little frustrating, so a little ding about that. Crocker's world building, ton of fun. I loved his use of what we generally understand about vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers, and then giving it that slight twist and freshening it up for this narrative. And I learned a ton about how these different character classes work, but definitely not everything. He doles out the information organically as it makes sense in the narrative. So that leaves at this point lots more to learn, especially about the wolves and the sorcerers. And I'm definitely interested in the rest of the trilogy. Themes, there's a few key ones that jump out. Power corrupts is on full display here. The inequity of class stratification. I mean, that's a major element of the story, with the vampires having the nobles, the middle class, the lower class, and that difficulty ever being able to change what position you're in. And these classes have clear inequities. I mean, just that difference between aging and non-aging, think about it. That's all class-based. So we're saying a lot about that in this story. The pursuit of knowledge is here, along with both the blessings and the dangers that can be unleashed by what you learn. And finally, the complexities of immortality. It may not be all it's cracked up to be. Trigger warnings for this story. Well, again, it's a dark fantasy tale. There's violence. Got to be aware of that. There's rebellion in points that come up. Class-based oppression, if that's something that actually has been close to home for you or just makes you uncomfortable, be aware. It's a big part of this story. And back to that violence, some of it is actually pretty brutal. It aligns with the best of dark fantasy. It's not grimdark, but it's dark. It may not be for the meek. Who do I recommend this for? What would I give for a rating? I was thoroughly entranced by this story and its ever-increasing mysteries, some being unveiled while you're discovering even more layers. It's fast-paced. It's got excellent characters. The gripping narrative, it was just all a win for me. I just found it really impressive as a debut novel. I'm giving it a rating of a strong 4.5 out of 5. And I'm only holding back from the full 5 because I want more, okay? Compared to the best of books I've read, it's not quite there, but it's really good. I could easily see the second or third book bringing home the 5. If you enjoy dark, epic fantasy, and you enjoy vampires and werewolves in particular, you're going to love this book. All right, that's where my spoiler-free content ends. If you have not read this yet, thanks for watching here. You're going to want to jump out now, but don't forget, give it a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.
The Spoiler Room.
Now, full spoil, just a little bit more for you here. You're here because you've also read the book, okay? So you'll know what I'm talking about. One of the things I found the most fascinating about this book was the myth of the mortals. We mortal humans are the missing piece that has not come into this world, but it turns out we may not always have been missing. And I love that. Okay, it's a myth. It's a fairy tale. No, we may have been around. Particularly, coming from the elements that the sorcerers bring into the story, we learn there are various artifacts and signs of a previous race of beings, a technologically advanced group of beings, as it turns out, when we, have bullets and armor devices, beings who may have destroyed themselves. They were apparently the dominant race back before the awakening, when vampires, werewolves, sorcerers were just, little more than mythic beings surviving on the fringe of society, being used for horror stories and bedtime tales. They had no society, they had no culture, they had no true identity yet. So from the reveals we get, this may actually be a post-apocalyptic story. This may be our world after we destroy ourselves, leaving the monsters of myth to be the only ones left around and rising, evolving into something far bigger and more complex. That's fascinating. But even better, the book suggests as you get to the end of the book that the mortals aren't actually gone. They're just not here right now. And they may be coming back. That one particular sorcerer believes 100% that that is true. Okay, that could be very cool. It just leaves me wanting to find out, where is this going? How soon can we get the next book, Ed? All right, that's what I have for you today. If you have comments on anything I said here, I'd love to see them. Put them down below. Leave them spoiler light. Put hints if it's something I will know about, but others who haven't read it, don't blow it for them. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about my thoughts, or just your thoughts on the book as a whole, and I will read and respond. Also down there in the show notes, you find all the other ways you can interact with Zach and I, our social medias, our Discord server. There's an invite. Come join us and talk more over there. Our email, and even our Patreon. Thank you to those of you who already support us every month on Patreon. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.